Nimbus Records was formed in the very late 1960s in Birmingham. My brother Michael Reynolds and Numa Count Lubinsky had formed a record company back in the 50s, but in those days it was very much a closed shop. You know, even finding out where to buy a microphone was a trade secret. And so that had to take a back seat for all those years whilst we built up a property business in Birmingham, and then came back to recording. We built a studio in Birmingham, and that's where we recorded people like Zado Perlmutter, and started our relationship with Martin Jones, and we made some very, very fine recordings there. We always had a wish to live and work in one place, and by this time we had, in the middle 70s, we had acquired a disc cutting machine. This was a Neumann disc mastering lathe for making LP masters. And we realized that we could transfer our recordings from master tape onto master disc, but we couldn't find people to make good enough LPs from those masters. So we decided we'd have to make our own. So we were on the hunt for somewhere bigger, because although Numa had a scheme to actually bury a pressing plant in the garden, I told him I think the neighbours would notice the steam, so we'll have to find somewhere else. And by great good fortune we found Wyastone Leys. It's been a great place for us. It's allowed us to live here, to build studio here, to build a business here.
I suppose Nimbus's rise to popular awareness would start with Bernard Roberts in the very late 70s, early 80s. We asked him to come and record all the Beethoven piano sonatas and to do it direct to disc. And for those of you who are not aware of what that is, it's really an extension of what 78s were. It was cutting the music directly onto a shellac disc, LP disc. So you couldn't stop, you couldn't edit. Even the gaps between the movements had to be exactly what you wanted them to be. And if there were two short sonatas that had to go on the same side of an LP, you had to play them continuously. So a huge discipline, and a very unique discipline in an age that got used to tape and editing. And those recordings that Bernard made for us, I think, put us on the map. There are still musicians who have the huge courage of conviction required to go into a studio, perform, and leave it alone. Currently, we're working with two pianists, entirely different temperaments, but who have that kind of conviction. Martin Jones, British pianist, who we've been recording since 1969, if you believe it, who has dozens of recordings. His sessions are a joy. He will turn up, he plays, he leaves, that's it. Similarly, the Russian, now American pianist, Vladimir Feltzman, I only get two performances of any piece of music from him. I get the first one, followed directly by the second one, and that's it. You take your choice. If we look at conductors and larger scale recordings, William Boughton, who's now in America, who was the founder and principal conductor of the English Symphony Orchestra, always had that conviction. I can think of things like the Tallis Fantasia of Vaughan Williams. That's a complete performance on record. A wonderful thing to do, as is the Strauss Metamorphosen. These are major, major pieces which, if you cut into them, you destroy something seamless about the progress of the music. He has that conviction. And looking perhaps into even more complex things, the music of George Benjamin. George is at least as enthusiastic to have his live performances on record as he is to have things that are studio produced, because he understands the critical importance of the energy that comes from a performance. Even though there will be errors, even though there will be mistakes, they're not the most important thing.
For me, the most sustainable statement that Nimbus has ever come up with is technology serving the arts. It meant that throughout all of the ancillary businesses that we ran, the core of the company was always making music. And Although we started in Birmingham in the 1960s as a property company, and we morphed into being one of the highest quality LP manufacturers, we were the first people ever to make CD. We made the most comprehensive and over-specified mastering systems that were used by all of the DVD and CDR makers in the world. There has always been another business that runs alongside the record label, and that business has enabled the company to make long-term investments in high-quality recordings. Nimbus as a record label is in the best health it's ever been, because having come out from underneath the support of major corporations, it is now meaner and leaner than it ever has been, really. It's now absolutely funded well. It's self-sustaining on its own right. And with short-run manufacturing, it means that not only will Nimbus be the first record label ever to have been made on CD, but probably will be the last record label ever to be made on CD.